So welcome. So to anyone that's going to watch this interview, most of you will know that myself and Matt recently had a baby boy, recently as in almost 10 months ago, but it still feels quite recent. And if you've been following our journey, we are also currently building a new home. And as you can see, this book here of Nicole Bijlsma, Healthy Home, Healthy Family, has been my Bible. You can see all the tabs. So we've used that to help guide us to creating the healthiest space possible. Today, I'm fortunate enough to have Cole here with me today to talk all things healthy nursery. So Nicole has a special passion in environmental medicine and is well known for her knowledge around creating a healthy home that promotes optimal health. She's a building biologist, best-selling author, and principal of the Australian College of Environmental Studies. With 30 plus years experience lecturing in tertiary institutions and at medical conferences in nutrition, Chinese medicine, and environmental science, Nicole is one of the most trusted sources of information in her field. I'd like to welcome you here today, Nicole, and thank you for taking your time to record this interview with me. I'm mindful of your time. You're a very busy lady, so we'll just dive in and get started if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, so my first question today is, why is it important to create a healthy nursery, and what type of things contribute to an unhealthy nursery? I understand that this is quite a broad question that could lead down many rabbit holes, but if you could just touch on a few points that you feel are the most important, that would be great.
Sure. All right. There are several hazards that I've been mindful of that a baby, infant or child would be exposed to in the home that we know can cause serious adverse health effects. And the first one would be lead. So lead in paint. If your house is built prior to 1985, then you need to get your paint, the walls tested for lead paint. Up until 1965, you had, up to a 50% lead content in paint. And of course, if they've just layered the paint over the years, then, there's a good chance that it may be there. Now, generally, lead paint is not a problem unless it becomes disturbed. So if you decide to renovate the nursery prior to bulbs coming along, that is really when a lot of the hazards can be exposed to the mother and therefore into the fetus. And that can have devastating impacts on that child's life for the rest of its life, because of course we know lead causes neurobehavioral disorders, especially drop in IQ and learning and behavioral problems. We know a significant proportion of men in prison who are illiterate have high levels of lead, probably from childhood. We know women passed the lead on that they were exposed to as children when their homes were renovated, and it stays in their bones. And when they are pregnant, the bones often demineralize and pass it through the placenta. So just having a history of being exposed as a woman, the mother, in her childhood can also be problematic. So that's the first thing. If you're going to renovate, then it's really important that you test the walls for lead paint if the house is built prior to 1985. The second one is chemicals. So if you're going to use paints again and sealants to renovate, then you're going to have high levels of what we call VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, which are the chemical smell from the paints and the sealants, etc. And they can take quite a long time to outgas. So you want to choose paints that have not just low VOC, but actually low semi-VOCs, because it's the semi-VOCs that actually take years to outgas. Formaldehyde, polyurethane, foam, polyurethane finishes like floorboards, which have the finish on them, that's incredibly toxic and takes years to outgas, and they're very strong chemicals. So if you're going to do the nursery, be mindful the type of paints you use, that they're low semi-VOCs. And of course, you're not using strong glues. New carpets and all those things should be made from natural materials. Wool, alpaca is one of the best. And wool is good, providing there's not a wool allergy, or cotton or things like that, or even better, floorboards with rugs made from natural materials, because then you can clean the rugs. I would say if the parents have allergies, I would strongly suggest they remove all the carpets in the house before the baby's born, preferably before they're pregnant. And because that's where the archaeological dig site of the entire house is sitting in the carpet dust. Every person that walked in there, every plant, every animal has its DNA sitting in your carpet, along with potentially asbestos fibre, lead dust, solvents, flame retardants, chemicals, air fresheners, Pesticides, it's like the archaeological dig site. So
Wow.
first thing I do if I was renting is to remove the carpets and I would actually replace the flexible ducts. So if you own the home, you can't clean ducts. They can't be cleaned. So if you get someone who comes and charges $300-400 to clean your duct, you might as well just give it to them and forget doing the job. The problem with that is they use whips, and when they use whips, they can penetrate the very flimsy aluminium that's in the flexible duct. And that means that if there's any mold in the subfloor or moisture, you're now going to push mold throughout the house. So I would say if you've got asthma or allergies as parents, that I strongly suggest you remove the carpet and you replace all the flexible ductwork in the subfloor, which is under the house. It might cost you $1,200 for a 3-bedroom home, but it's well worth it if you've got allergies. Well worth it. That's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck in reducing allergy load. With the nursery, if you've got mattresses, you want natural fibers like pure latex, not Talalay, which is a synthetic latex that comes from Europe, and that's not good. Your natural latex comes from Malaysia, from rubber plants, and that's the least allergenic. You never ever want a secondhand mattress or a hand-me-down mattress for a child, because any urine in that mattress is going to support microbial growth and increase risk for allergies and other things like that. And I see that so often, especially when you get to your second or third or fourth kid. It's like, oh, I'll just pass down the mattress full of urine from the other 3 kids. And that poor kid has just got to deal with this shocking, because they're spending 14, 15, 16 hours a day on the cot. That's their breathing zone. So that's the most important part of a healthy nursery, starting on the mattress where they're in close contact with the mattress, and potentially, well, you don't use pillows in infants initially, and making sure that's new and not formaldehyde foam, that it's a natural latex is better. You know, because when you buy it, it doesn't smell like rubber. The synthetic stuff smells like rubber, but the good stuff doesn't. So I would recommend that. Or bamboo or futon or something like that can be aired regularly is important. There's also electromagnetic fields, wireless technologies. I'm about to publish a study on the impact of a baby monitor on healthy adult sleep, and it was statistically significant that it impacted healthy adults using a baby monitor, which happens to be the highest level of radiation than almost any device in the house. It's absolutely disgusting that you can buy these monitors in light of the radiation they're pumping out, similar to mobile phone base stations. And as building biologists, we're finding many of the children are not sleeping in these cots all the room at all. I don't understand why people feel the need to have to hear their kid breathe or sleep or watch them. Like, you know, having had twins and 3 kids under 3, it's like I've swaddled you, I've changed your butt, I've breastfed you, I've burped you, you're in there, I need an hour off. Like, you know, but my kids weren't high-risk SIDS. So obviously if there's a medical disorder, then you'll use a hardwired CCTV, but do not use wireless baby monitors. They're a disaster in terms of the radiation. And we know this radiation affects sleep. It suppresses melatonin, which is the most important anti-cancer hormone we have, and it impacts sleep cycles significantly. So, you know, when I see a baby monitor in a kid's room, that's the first thing I'm going, I'll get my meters out. And the sound from them is so disturbing in the room. It's like, I can't even bear to be in that room with my meter on. So it just shows the parents why I have serious concerns about the use of any wireless devices in that child's room or even in adjacent rooms. So routers, extenders, boosters should not be within 3 rooms of a nursery, because you'll find with meters, it will create high levels of radiation that can easily be detected with our meters.
Wow. That's a lot of information, and it's quite scary actually, and I'm sure lots of people aren't aware of that, so thank you for sharing. I just want to revisit a few of those things. So in regards to lead being passed on to the fetus, can other VOCs cross the placenta as well?
Yes. Depends if they're lipophilic, so if they're fat loving. So the problem is there's many chemicals women can be exposed to, like fragrances, air fresheners, pesticides that are lipophilic. They're like fat. So wherever the fat is, that's where they go. And unfortunately, most of them end up in the breast milk, where they're passed on through breastfeeding. In fact, the World Health Organization sees breast milk as one of the best markers for human exposures to chemicals, because that's where most of it ends up. which is incredibly depressing. I've been talking about it at medical conferences for some time. And this is why it's so important that you reduce your toxic load as fast as possible. Like, we now know that preconception care began with your grandmother, because the grandmother was passing it down to the mother. And of course, when your mother was pregnant at week 14, and you were there as a female, that all your eggs were there. So whatever your mother was exposed to, like mum was trying to smoke during the pregnancy, my pregnancy, but because she was so nauseous, fortunately, she couldn't sustain that. I was affected, low birth weight, and my children are affected because my eggs are there. All her grandchildren are already in me, and we've got 3 generations in one go. So, any asbestos are related to, any chemicals, but the big ones are chemicals that smell, fragrances, air fresheners, are hormone disrupting chemicals. Many of them are lipophilic. They need to be avoided as fast as possible. Your conventional perfumes and things like that are bad. PVC, you don't want any PVC flooring or PVC sheets in the home. They are high in phthalates as well, and now starting to be correlated with breast cancer risk. So these things are important, that you reduce your exposure and get rid of stuff you don't need. Like, Scotch Guard in the house is insane, the flame retardants, because there's so much evidence on their impact that they should be avoided as well. Yeah, I think I've completely got off track. What was your question again?
About VOCs crossing the placenta, but that's okay. You answered it. Yes. Okay. So you spoke about the nursery or the baby's room or wherever their sleeping space is to be about, at least 3 rooms away from wireless routers. Is there any other sort of technology in the house that we should be mindful of, and, maintaining a minimum distance to minimize the exposure to EMFs?
The best case scenario is to not have any wireless devices in the house, without doubt, because that router, you'll pick it up from outside, upstairs, neighbour. They're designed that you don't complain. So when you get the router, if you can't get hardwired, say, for example, you're renting and you don't want to spend $1,500 to get an electrician to hardwire the whole house, then I would say, turn your router off when it's not in use. And even have a clock timer. You can have timers for lights on holidays. Set that up near the router so it automatically clicks off. So if you don't have to think about it, it automatically is off, especially at night when you're sleeping. Keep the router well away from areas where you spend time, or bedrooms. It should be away, ideally in a garage or away from the house, or a room that no one's using, very regularly, like a guest bedroom.
Yeah.
I would power down the router. So if you go to the manufacturer's website, you'll see there's a number under the router, and you put that number in, get to the manufacturer's website and power it down. So it's only functioning at 5%, not 95%. And that will significantly reduce the amount of radio frequencies emitted from the router. And of course, avoid all extenders and boosters. They're very high levels of radiation. And just get used to being able to use your technology, your laptops, iPads, whatever, in dedicate a certain area of your house to using it, as opposed to bathing the entire house with these radio frequencies that impact sleep, impact reproduction, impact the circadian rhythm, impact your cancer risk, which is now well established in the scientific literature.
Yeah. So they're great tips. We've had to move into a rental because our previous house sold while we're building our new home, and obviously we can't hardwire the place. So we have our Wi-Fi on a timer that goes off, for 10 or 12 hours overnight. So we have a decent portion of the time without Wi-Fi, and we've powered it right down. Unfortunately, the lowest we could go is 25%. But yeah, to anyone that's watching this, I know I actually struggled to find out how to power down the Wi-Fi. So if you want to learn how to do it, feel free to send me a message and I can walk you through it, because it's really simple now that I know what I'm doing.
Yes. And the other one I didn't mention is smart meters. So if you've got an inverter or smart meter or fridge on the other side of the wall of the nursery where the cot is, that's a big no, because that's going to be emitting electromagnetic fields through the wall. So you want to make sure the nursery isn't near a smart meter or inverter, which is basically converts, if you've got solar panels, it converts sun energy into AC electric field, AC energy, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so you spoke about a mattress and looking for natural fibers and real latex. Is there like a lifespan on the mattress, or, is it just every new child upgrade or buy a new one for their health and safety?
Well, I mean, if you have like a a sheet, if it's a new mattress, obviously with your first child, and you have it so that you can't get urine, can't penetrate into the mattress, obviously you can pass that down.
Yep.
I would use something like a eucalyptus fiber, like Protect the Bed. There's a couple of
Okay.
brands that I recommend on my website, buildingbiology.com.au. So it's made from natural eucalyptus fiber, and it enables water vapor to come through, but not liquid water like urine. So that will protect the mattress from urine stains, and it's breathable. Unfortunately, a lot of the bedwetting sheets that you get are PVC, which is really bad. And that should not be on the bed or children exposed to that. So there are some good options. And more importantly, air the bed, the cot, as often as you can. As soon as you wash the sheets and Bubs isn't there, just air it in the sun, even if it's only for an hour or two. In warm, dry sun is a great idea, and that just helps to reduce the moisture, because it's the moisture in the mattress that's often supporting microbial growth.
Yeah. Okay. And do you know much about wool as a mattress protector? Because I know that wool can be quite water repellent. We use it in cloth nappies, but I've never used it as a mattress protector. Is that another good option?
You can look. It depends. If it's it has to be quite thin, because you don't want it too thin, so they're not, getting their mouth so they can breathe, because the whole SIDS issue. Look, I love wool, providing they're not allergic to it, of course, because so many people are. All my doonas at home are wool, and it's incredibly warm and cooling in summer and warm in winter, and it's thin. So it feels like there's hardly anything on you, and especially being postmenopause, it's absolutely fantastic. I love my wool. And the fact that they stitch it so there's only little pockets, so you're not getting like the old duck feather doonas where it's fallen to the end of your feet, and, you're freezing at night time. So, I love wool. It's a natural fibre, and it's naturally flame retardant. Bamboo is also an excellent material. It's because there's hardly any, pesticides you need for, and hemp. I mean, you can't go past hemp for anything, pretty much. Materials.
Yeah, it's so versatile, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible.
And so the last thing with mattresses, am I correct in saying that if it's an inner spring mattress, that those inner springs can act as like mini antennas and sort of amplify the EMFs?
In theory, yes, but the chances that will happen is very low, because you have to be near a source of electromagnetic fields in order for that capacitance coupling to happen. And that's pretty unlikely. And the chances, even if that did happen, would that impact the child's health? Pretty unlikely. Okay. The research on that showed that if people in Europe were near a TV transmission tower and the waves were coming through the house, which they do, through the mattress, that it increased breast cancer risk. But there was only a handful of studies on that, and there really hasn't been much to validate those concerns. So because cot mattresses are so thin, I don't think there are many that would have springs in them. I think most of them would be springless, I'd imagine.
When I was looking for one, because I ended up buying a natural latex one, of course, pretty much all the ones that I could find had inner springs. I was mind blown. And there wasn't many that I could find without, and maybe because we were looking for a particular size as well. Not that my child's ever slept on his cot mattress, but anyway, I was just mind blown. They all had springs in them that I could find. Oh, okay. So I got a latex one, so that was good. So my next question is, speaking of natural fibers, bed linen, mattress protectors, all those things, other things that are found in a nursery like blankets or child's clothing, how do we know if something has potentially toxic dyes or flame retardants on it?
If it comes from overseas, there's a good chance there may be formaldehyde, which is an anti-creasing agent, or flame retardant. So I would say wherever possible, try and buy your materials from an Australian manufacturer, especially furnishings and mattresses, because they're not allowed to put formaldehyde in them. Formaldehyde is a known carcinogen that causes throat cancer, and it's an eye, skin and lung irritant. So definitely always buy Australian made when it comes to bedding and mattresses and furnishings, because they can't put them in. Materials like wool, which is naturally flame resistant, obviously are less likely. Alpaca is also good. Hemp is great. Bamboo is good. They require less pesticides. But you really need to check with the manufacturer. Are there flame retardants in them? And many of these products do, especially your furnishings. Like you can buy all these extra ridiculous products to spray on them, and you don't want to do that, because the children, the toxic load is already so high. The large population biomonitoring studies in the US, which is the largest biomonitoring study in the world, has shown each generation is just more and more polluted that's been passed in through the placenta. So any way in which the parents, and especially the mother, can reduce her toxic load by not putting crap on her face and moisturizers and, that are full of preservatives, which are pesticides. Most preservatives in skincare are pesticides that are impacting the microbiome. So, you want to go back to basics. Like for me, I use rosehip oil or camellia nut oil or jojoba oil on my face, and have been for decades. I don't use moisturizers. I don't use products that, people are trying to flog to me that I need when, most of the time you don't need them. So just go back to basics. Coconut oil, I use mascara. That's about as far as my makeup routine goes, is mascara. And then I get coconut oil with a cotton tip to get rid of it. That's my entire makeup routine.
So simple.
Lipstick is lead. If you're pregnant, you shouldn't be having any coloured lipstick, because most of those will be containing lead, which you'll absorb through your lips, and that's a disaster. So there are simple things. And again, recently the government just announced it's going to put $2 billion into replacing brass taps, because many of the brass taps that people have bought over the last 2 decades contain up to 6% lead. Now they're realising that is a complete disaster for human health, and these stupid laws. And so really important. Water filters are critical, and getting rid of lead especially, because the ramifications on children's health are just a disaster.
And we're just like, there's just so many sources out there that all these, you think it's just a little bit of lipstick here and there, but you forget about all the other sources, and it's the cumulative effect that it has, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Disaster.
The one that came up a lot with the Danish in 2006, they launched a campaign to every maternity and obstetric maternity ward in hospitals throughout Denmark, not for women to wear makeup, personal care products, because of the phthalate exposures. That was a campaign across the entire country. Now that was 2006, so 14 years ago, 15 years ago. I never heard anything like that in Australia.
No, it really is. And like, once you start eliminating these things from your life, I find personally, I can smell things like fragrance, like artificial fragrance, of course, a mile away. It is so overwhelming, and people think I'm nuts, but I'm just like, oh, stay away. It's just
the irony is the research by Professor Anne Steinemann from the University of Melbourne showed that 1/3 of Australians react very badly to smells, chemicals, perfumes, and it causes headaches. So it causes neurological deficits, and it impacts the body physically. In Canada, there's some states that have banned perfume from the workplace, or you have to go home. And that was in like more than 10 years ago. So we need to actually start acting on the evidence, because these chemicals are a sign, when people react to them, that they're the canaries in the mine warning the entire other population who aren't sensitive that it's still impacting them, and has impacts especially on reproductive health. Men's sperm count has dropped by 50% in the last 50 years. And a lot of it's now attributed to these chemicals, especially pesticides, changing in farming practices. The pesticides are all over in your household dust, because you're tracking them on your feet, outside. If you're living near golf courses and you're thinking about having kids, move as fast as possible and get your blood checked for chemicals, because they'll be high. And these are the things people don't know. These are things that doctors don't know. And yet the literature is loaded with this, and has been for decades.
It's just very frightening. It makes me worry for, my future generations, like my son, what's his children going to be like? Scary.
I think you just look at the autism pandemic and the ADHD affects 11% of the world's children's populations. It's not an epidemic, it's a pandemic.
It is.
And what seems to have happened in the last 3 decades is an explosion of chemicals that we're using, but especially pesticides and changes in farming practices that have led to this incredible epidemic in pesticides in a growing brain, autism and ADHD, and an old brain, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I published research on the impact of environmental chemicals on human health, and the one chemical that came up all the time were pesticides. So this is why you've got to take your shoes off before you go inside the house, so you're not tracking it in, because of course the council is spraying tons of the stuff all over the parks and the schools and the golf courses and to keep nature at bay. So that's a big one for me. And also when I'm doing audits in people's homes, I've got, like, some people have 7 cans of Mortein to chase one fly with a can of Mortein all over the house. That chemical is staying and it's imprinted now all over the carpet and everywhere, and it can be devastating for children. But you won't see the effect then. You'll see it when they try to have kids, when they're infertile, when their breast cancer risk increases. So this is why we need a lot of information and, webinars like this to educate people to actually just don't buy half the stuff they buy and don't put it on their body.
So next question regarding the sleeping space for a child. Is there any particular material we should be looking for like the cot frame? Should it be like a natural untreated timber, or should it be raw or painted, or, what should we be looking for?
Yeah, so look, timber is fine. Timber's great. That's, used maybe as stain that's either raw. Timber is fine, so it's not treated at all. Or if you're going to stain it, use something that's very low semi-VOC, like Levos products. There's a list of paint supplies I provide. Or if you're going to get it from the store, when they paint it and it's new, let it sit in the factory for an extra couple of months and order it well beforehand, so it's outgassed there rather than doing that in your house.
Okay. So is there like a certain time frame you would recommend for off-gassing products, or does it depend on the item? If it's soft, is it a hard structure? Do we just put it out in the sun for a couple of days?
Yeah, that's a hard one to answer, but generally putting it, getting this in a time when it's dry sun, like in Melbourne, that's easy in summertime. You just buy your nursery and the stuff for the nursery well before when the baby is due, and allow it to outgas in the sun. So it's doing it, because the hotter it is, the more it outgasses, and putting it, undercover in the garage, or if you're going to put it outside, for a few days, a week if you can, and then allow it to outgas, because you're going to speed up that process so it's not happening in the baby's room. It's a good idea.
Or as another option, we could perhaps buy secondhand, obviously not the mattress like we spoke about, but those things like a cot, a bed frame, because it should have well and truly off-gassed by then. And it's better for the environment.
It is. The only problem is there's so many that's contaminated with mold.
Yes, okay, that's something to be mindful of.
I wouldn't do that, only because I see so many beds contaminated with mold, and when we've tested them, I would look, first thing I look for with a torch is under the bed slats. If there's any sort of mottling, it looks like dust. More often than not, that's going to be Aspergillus penicillium, and having that so close to the baby's face is, I think you're better off getting a new cot than risking doing that, because I see so many contaminated beds. As soon as that cot is in a water damaged house, it's no good, because semi-porous materials that are exposed to mold and fungal particulate will be contaminated, and the only way you're going to get it out of the pores of the wood is to sandblast it, which is going to cost a lot for someone to do. It's not worth it. So you're looking at the risks. I think you're better off getting a newer bed frame that's maybe not treated, or at least treated with a breathable material, like the products that I've mentioned on my website, as opposed to conventional paints, and then let it outgas for a while before baby's born. That would be a better option.
And then if that's not in someone's budget, we just make sure that we have to inspect it and make sure there's no mottling on the timber. All right,
you get a good torch and really have a look to see that there's no dirt or anything on it. There's a specific look that you'll see with mold, especially underneath the bed frame and around it. So really look at it carefully, because that could increase that child's risk for asthma and allergies very quickly.
All right. So when it comes to lighting in the nursery, natural light is always best. Is there anything that we need to be mindful of in regards to artificial lighting? Anything that we should be looking out for?
So no compact fluorescent light bulbs or LEDs that emit blue light. So make sure they're low blue light is really important. Often, for example, with younger children, if they're scared of the dark, you can get these red glow lamps that have no blue light. So they're blue light low. Consider those. because anything that emits blue light will suppress melatonin and affect sleep cycles.
Yeah.
So I would just be mindful in the bedroom, have, say, something like a low blue light lamp that is used so that it's not going to impact their health. There's a lot on the market now, even LEDs, low blue light that you can get. So be mindful about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so before we spoke about baby monitors and how hazardous they can be to our children's health, would it be safe to say that that's, you know, the same for the other sleeping monitoring devices like angel mats and these wireless or Bluetooth monitoring sleeping bags that measure the baby's temperature and movements? I know. It's so scary.
You put up your vagina to play music to your unborn child. Like, what the hell?
Oh my God. I've never heard of that, but that is insane. Oh God.
And anything wireless emits high levels of radio frequencies. Now, I want to get really clear. What people don't understand is there's no exposure standards in this country for long-term exposures to all of the wireless devices in our house. The current standards by our PANSA, which is the Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Authority, are based on 6-minute heating effects. So it means that radiation has to be so high to hit your brain or your skin for 6 minutes before it's considered to be above the standard. There are no standards for long-term exposures to all the wireless devices or cell phone radiation from cell phones in this country. There's no standards. But Russia's standards are based on long-term exposure standards, and they're 100 times lower than the existing standards that we use for 6-minute increments.
Right. Wow. I feel like we're so far behind in so many areas. We need to catch up. Lucky we have people like you educating Australia and the world. But yeah, more people need to hear this information. It's very frightening, as I've said a few times already. So was there anything else that you wanted to cover in regards to creating a healthy nursery, a healthy space for our children, for us?
Yeah, I guess it's you want the space to be, when you walk in, that it feels right. There's a lot of natural light is important to set the circadian rhythm, that it's not a dark room. So I really love natural light as much as possible, because of course that's what whatever mimics nature is what you want to replicate in the house. Keep the house dry. As soon as you have moisture sitting on a surface for 48 hours or more, it's going to support microbial growth like mold. So mold can have devastating impacts. If pregnant women are in water damaged buildings where there's mold, that can have serious implications for early delivery, and also increased risk for atopic children, allergies, asthma, and food allergies. We're finding more and more in children born when the mothers are exposed to moldy environments. So, being mindful about where the mother is in terms of pregnancy, and not suddenly having to get the nursery perfect. Sanding the paint, not doing that herself. Please check for lead before you do any renovation. It'd be better off to have a nursery that hasn't been done up than to expose the mother and the unborn child to this, because to get lead out of the body of a child, those chemicals are very dangerous. They can cause kidney failure. So, it's very difficult. So prevention is really the key. It's already stressful, when Bubs comes and you don't know what you're doing. They don't come with a manual, which really annoyed me. I'm going to have a big word with the woman upstairs when I go up there. Yes. Just keep to natural fibres, mimic nature as much as possible, and just, don't be too hard on yourself as a parent. I think we should get singlets that say, I suck at this. Before they're on board and go, kids, the one thing I do with my kids is, when they start being annoying, etc., is I just remind them I gave them life, and no one's going to top that as a gift. So,
that's awesome. Yes. And I think for parents, it's important that they know that anything they can do to improve their living space for the health of the child, for the health of themselves, is a step in the right direction. You don't have to be able to do everything. Yes, we can try and achieve all these healthy steps. And sometimes it's just not possible for us to do that, whatever the barrier may be. So any step that you can, implement is better than not implementing anything at all.
Absolutely. Any step, opening windows to get good passive ventilation, especially in Melbourne, for example, is important. And the only other thing I want to mention is don't use talcum powder, because that is definitely a lung irritant and, of course, increases risk for ovarian cancer later on in life. So no talcum powder on baby genitals. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been a very informative chat, and I'm sure lots of people are going to get a lot of information out of this so that they can create a healthier space for themselves wherever they are in their journey, whether they have children or not. So thank you. And to anyone that wants any further information, I highly recommend this book that I showed in the beginning, Healthy Home, Healthy Family. It is just a wealth of information. And like I said, it's got so many tabs. We have visited this book lots and lots of times. So yeah, go online, grab one of those for yourself, and feel free to email me any questions that you might have, and I will do my best to help answer them. And if not, I will try and point you in the right direction so that you can find the information. Thank you.
Thank you.